All right, so first piece of equipment I'm going to talk about is the timer. There's a little butterfly switch on the side. We can turn that on. And there are 3 different dials here. This is for 10-second increments, 10, 20, 30. You want to make it at default at 0. You've also got single seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Default is 0. And fractions of a second. If you're working with a fiber-based paper or fine print, you might need that, but mostly you'll be using the top 2 dials. You also want to make sure your range is at 1x, or if you want to change this to increments of 10, 10, 20, 30, that's 10x. But I like to keep it on 1x. I don't find that I need much more than that. All right, we've also got a focus on this. Focus switch just keeps the light on as long as you keep it on that switch. We've also got the timer switch. I'm going to set this to 2 seconds and then press this little button and our light will shut off after 2 seconds. That's how we time prints when we're making the actual prints. All right, other equipment. This is a focus aid. Some people call them a grain focuser. Basically, it's like looking through a little microscope. When you are looking at your film, which we'll do in a minute, you can see the individual particles of grain, the silver that is embedded into your film, and from there you can focus that grain, which gives you the ability to see your image on a microscopic level as focused as you shot it. So if you shot it out of focus, you're not going to fix that. But the negative itself, when you're focusing in the enlarger, will be as sharp as it possibly can be. We also have a couple of different negative carriers here. Think of these as they carry the negative to the enlarger. They have a ring on the bottom. And the reason I have 2 is to show you, for creative purposes, someone has filed out the edges of this to provide a nice dark line around their print. This one is unfiled, so you'll just get the plain edge that would normally be your print. That's true of ones that look like this too. These have a little spring hinge, so they've got a little bit more bounce to them, but same thing. This isn't filed out and it's going to give you a nice crisp edge. This is going to give you a more artistic edge. And we'll take a look at that. All right, we have a couple of different easels here. One is a contact printer for making contact sheets. When you have a roll of film that you've developed, you can make an index print, which shows you what's on the film, and you can determine which pictures you want to print from there. This will be used to make either 8 by 10, 5 by 7. You can do a wallet size or a small one. There are also easels. Will someone grab one of those other easels just so we can...
The big one?
Yeah, just so we can show them off. Thank you. We also have this easel as well, which adjusts by sliding back and forth these little tabs, and you can adjust your print area that way with this type of easel. All right, so let's go ahead and make a contact sheet, because that's a really useful exercise. We'll be using our contact printer with that. And I'm going to talk a little bit before we do that about the enlarger parts. We have our lens right here, and it has different adjustments, different numbers. This is the aperture of your lens. So just like your camera, this determines how much light comes in and out. We also have the bellows, and this lever, this is where our negative carrier, the thing that carries the negative to the enlarger, goes. You'll feel it click in place in that rim. And then we can lower that back down. We also have our light source up here and a filter chamber. So if we want to use a filter, I'll get into that later, that's where it could be placed. It can also be placed underneath the enlarger. There's 2 options for filter in this enlarger. And then our light source is up here. If your light ever doesn't come on, it's just a quick little adjustment. Pull this out and replace the bulb. We also have something that raises and lowers the enlarger, so if I want to make a small print, I can make it very small. I can also make something very large with this, just depending on how high or low this is. You've got a pen that can lock this into place too. We have a box of photographic paper. This is sensitive to light, so don't open this except under our safe light conditions. You probably already know that, but I've seen a couple of people ruin a big box of paper by opening it to check it out in the light, so just be cautious. I've cut some test strips, and now we're going to get things set up to do a test strip, which is going to help us determine the overall exposure time we need for our contact sheet. Now, some of you may have varying exposures on your contact sheet. So we're going to look for an area that represents the overall contrast that we're looking for the whole sheet, knowing that our goal is not to get every single picture to come out perfectly developed. Our goal is to get an index that we can look at outside to determine what we want to make enlargements of. So I am looking at this. I'm going to turn on my focus light, take the negative carrier out. Another little caution is if you're in here working with neighbors, remember to keep your filter drawer closed because that light will spill out over the room. All right, so I think the middle of this looks pretty good. What I'm going to do now is get my test strip. So I'm lining this up. You can see I've actually got a couple of my negatives sort of overlapping. Again, the goal is not to make beautiful prints. The goal is to get the exposure correct. The other thing I'm going to do with this is start on about an f8 with my light source. I can go up or down if I need to, but that's a good starting place. And I've got this timer set to 2-second increments. I'm going to come in here. We're going to hit it and move this over. I'm moving it over about, an 1.5 inches each time. Again, not going on the lines and hovering above. And my last exposure, I just take it completely off. And now what I've done is I've started here, so I now have 2 seconds of exposure, 4, 6, 8, and 10. It goes the opposite because the end you started with is the one that was exposed the longest time. All right, we're going to now develop our test strip, gently agitating the chemistry. I just kind of take the edge and float it through here. It's really best to do this on your own and not have to share chemistry trays with other folks, but sometimes you do, so just be aware if there are other prints in here while you're working. Nobody should ever leave a print unattended in here. And we're going for a total of 1 to 2 minutes in our developer. I'm going to do a full 2, make sure that all our dark areas really get nice and crisp and dark, and that we have a beautiful look to our black and white contrast. Go ahead and just kind of drip this off, let all the extra chemical fall into the tray. And next, same thing. Stop that, it's only 30 seconds though, it's really fast. Gentle agitation's always good. It helps encourage, the movement of the chemical off and out of the paper. We're stopping the development at this point. It halts what was happening here. The chemical process. And it's very fast. Our last step, and this is a rapid fixer, so we only need 2 minutes. If you're using a regular fixer that doesn't have the rapid agent or isn't mixed at that dilution, it'll be longer. And again, refer to your labeling on your chemistry. So that's about 5 to 7 minutes, sorry, with that non-rapid. So I've got 2 full minutes here. Our test strip. We don't want to read a test strip in under safe light conditions because we won't see, as you saw when I turned that up. This looked a lot darker than it does now. I am going to give it a quick rinse. This is something I throw in the trash, so I'm not worried about the full 10-minute water wash that we would normally do. I just want to get it safe enough for me to handle so I can read the information. So I'm going to swish that off. pick it up with my tongs, and now we can assess the test strip. So on this end, I have the least amount of time, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. We can see 10 is getting, what we're looking for here is not necessarily which one looks the best to our eye, but which one has the best balance of light and dark. And so it's actually, for this, I think going to be about 3 to 4 seconds to do this correctly. Remember, there's a dry down factor with all paper. It gets just a tiny bit darker when it dries. So you want to compensate that. This goes in the trash. I don't really need it. You may want to keep it around till you're done really with making your contact sheet, but that's not anything you need to save. So now we've determined our time is about, I'm going to say 3 minutes. We've got our contact printer here. I've got a fresh piece of paper I'm going to grab. Again, closing my box and securing all my paper so that when I do turn on the light in here, or if you've got other folks working in here with you, nobody fogs your image. Shiny side of our paper goes up. The negatives curl towards the emulsion side. So you want to put them facing down. So the shiny side of this, and then they will look correct in your contact or on your negative in terms of the orientation of them. No letters or anything are printed backwards. So you can put that in correctly. And now I've set my timer to 3, and I've got my time button here, and I'm going to go. And that was fast. So ideally, we're going to get just a lovely contact print that we can really assess which images we want to enlarge. This is definitely the magic for me. I really love seeing prints come up in the developer. It's just so cool. All right. That is our 2-minute time. Again, these prints hold a lot of chemistry, so just make sure you let them drip off a little bit before you move to the next tray. And keep your tongs separate. Each tong should be labeled for the tray that it's using. We're going to do this 30 seconds. One of the things you see in a lot of TV and movies when people are developing prints is you see them jabbing at the print with their tongs, like going like this. Don't do that. That's actually a great way to scratch the surface of this. When it's wet, the gelatin and the silver particles are very, very delicate. You can scratch them with a fingernail or the end of your tongs, even though they're rubber tips, so be careful with that. And now we're in our fixer. And this is a 2-minute process. And then after the 2 minutes is up here, my gentle agitation's over, I'm going to let it into this water bath for a minimum of 10 minutes. Now, that time starts over when you put another print in it. So you either want to fully wash one or just remove all your 10 prints at a time at the end so that they fully wash. All right, we've just got a few more seconds left, and we'll go ahead and put in the wash and turn on our light. Take a look. Sometimes it wants to get stuck on the bottom of the pan. Just very gently pull it out, jerk your chemical off. Really, this is very important in the fixer. The more fixer you can drip off it, the better it's going to let the water wash do its job. So I tend to just let this drain for a few seconds to really make sure we can get as much off. And touch the edge to kind of encourage that. All right. Now we can once again turn on the light. What it will look like. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and pick it up. This is a water bath. You can use tongs here. We have them, but I do know that this has washed for a little bit. So I've got some different prints here. Let's see, I think I printed them upside down. Here's a nice little camera with a cup of tea. We have some botanical garden images and a lovely gate, a lovely iron gate that was at the botanical garden. So we can really print any of these images. They look pretty good. I'm going to go for the camera because this is photography and I do love photography.